All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We have a slight twist in our leadership development series. We usually talk about the things that make people successful and kind of analyze that and coach, train, teach to those ideas. What we're going to do today is talk about the things that could derail you during the process of coming to success, or even in some cases, once you reach success, the things that you would want to take into consideration. And then we've got an optimistic view of even when failure does arise that we want to talk about briefly. So with that, I'll introduce you to our co-host, Dr. Roger Hall. He's a business psychologist, executive coach, public speaker, and a multi-time author. And what I like the most is kind of the application or the execution side of things, of how it is that we make all this stuff work. So with that, we'll bring Dr. Hall on. How are you doing today?
I am doing quite well. Grateful to be here, Jared.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your thoughts on kind of this slight twist on our conversation?
Well, I like it. It reminds me of a conversation I've had a lot recently, but it goes back to the days on my internship. My graduate part of graduate school in psychology is you do an internship, and I was on my internship, and I had an instructor who was teaching us about marital therapy, and she said, you know, you can take a couple who is fighting and you can teach them how to fight fair and not have arguments anymore. And she says, but you'll never teach them how to be a happy couple, because the habits of being a healthy, happy couple are independent of stopping the bad behavior. So if you stop the bad behavior, okay, you're now at neutral, but that doesn't make you healthy.
Yeah.
And it's always stuck with me. And so the analogy I use is, if you break your leg, you got to heal your leg. But once it's healed, that doesn't make you an Olympian.
Right.
The practices and the habits of becoming an Olympian are separate and apart from getting your leg healed.
Yeah.
And so it's important to realize what we're talking about today are the broken bones. Okay? These are the things that'll derail you. But once you get rid of those, it's important that there's a whole set of other habits and skills that you have to learn in order to become excellent as a leader.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into the meat here after some quick housekeeping items here real quick. Let me introduce myself for those of you that I haven't met. My name is Jared Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead here at My Home Connection, also known as MHC Realty. Our sponsor for today is the perfect real estate business, which is obviously aspirational, but we've been implementing things over the last couple of decades, and in the last couple of years here in large part with Dr. Hall introducing business, life, coaching, mentoring, and training. A lot of things that we don't see in the practices of real estate that we're super excited to introduce. So if you have any questions or would like to learn more, feel free to reach out, and we'd be glad to help. So with that, I'll bring Dr. Hall back on. Yeah, I like that. I don't know, I guess as an analogy or metaphor.
Yeah, that distinction was, I mean, to me, it was such a profound insight. I've carried it for how many years is it now? 35 years?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a brilliant insight, and it's really shaped my thinking about the work that I do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I find it most often talked about, the things that cause or create success. But man, there are some things that'll come out of left field, even if you're doing all the right things, that man, if you're not aware, man, it just smacks you around and can undo essentially not only everything you've done, but even worse if you're not attentive. Yep. So I find this I think I'm going to find folks will find this very helpful to get ahead of that.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll go back to the Olympic athlete analogy. You can have all the right habits to do your sport well, but if you're not careful in the other areas, you're going to break your leg.
Yeah.
You could be just fall down the stairs. So it's important that you have some defensive. You got to have offense and you have to have defense. And so what we're talking about today is defense.
Well, I like the kind of athlete analogy too, because we've seen, kind of the what do you call somebody that like a pianist that just really like gets it? What do you shoot? The name's gonna escape me.
A virtuoso?
Yeah, yeah, that's one, but there was another one. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But you see these people that are super talented; they're just kind of gifted in certain areas. But man, their lives are a mess. Whether it's alcoholism, drugs, relationships, or whatever. And you're like, man, what could you do if you weren't constantly shooting yourself in the foot?
Well, I call those people naturals. There are some people who are just naturally gifted and it's not hard for them and they don't realize the benefits of practice and discipline because they're just naturally good at their thing. Yeah, it's too easy.
Yeah, I was thinking prodigy is what I was thinking.
Prodigy, that's a great word for it. Yep.
Yeah. So even they have to be, aware of this. And actually to some degree, you could be that prodigy and then step into some of this stuff and not succeed as much as somebody that is doing all the right habits, that isn't a natural at what they're doing, isn't a prodigy, that avoids these issues and get further ahead. So let's kind of chat about some of those.
Yeah, sure.
The first one I had is just the acknowledgement of leadership, whether you think you are or you or not. We've had this discussion, right? That we think everybody should appreciate that they're going to be a leader at some point in their life and take it seriously.
Yes.
So really assess: am I lacking leadership skills, or do I have some, but they're poor? Like, do that analysis, because even if you're only leading yourself, you're still leading somebody.
Yes. You're always leading somebody. And my definition of leadership development is personal development for people in leadership positions. And we're all at some point in our life going to be in a leadership position. So if we're not doing our own personal development, we won't be good at our job.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation today with a business owner, and he's got 3 people working for them. All of them are excellent at their task, at their responsibility. And each of them has a gap in how they lead. And none of them sees the gap. They go, my content knowledge is so good. One's angry, one's rigid, so being a great leader isn't about your expert knowledge. It's about how do I develop myself in my interactions with others.
Yeah, or taking an honest assessment and realizing that there's certain areas you're not a good leader for yourself or for others, and filling that with some other resource that's part of your team. Just own it instead of either not asking the question or not addressing the deficiencies. I think that's a derail quite often.
Yeah, I have worked with leaders who have told me. I had one leader tell me, of the 10 things you're going to try to teach me, I already know 9.9 of them, and I got nothing for you then. I mean, this is the end of our time together.
Yeah.
So it really is about teachability. It's about openness to learning, curiosity, a spirit of discovery. Those are all things that I see as central to becoming a great leader.
Yeah. If you assume you know everything, you're not going to learn anything. And every good leader knows there's more to learn.
Yes. And if you're a natural, whatever your skill set is, if you're naturally good at that, you don't realize how much you don't know. And it's pretty easy to become arrogant and think, oh, I'm so really good at this thing. That's all that's important. And not see how you fit in the context of the larger world.
Yeah.
Each of us has our giftedness, but none of us is enough to do everything.
Right. Yep. Yeah. The next one you and I've talked about briefly, not a lot, but I did want to bring it up today, is kind of the awareness of, what's my objective? Am I going fast or am I going far? And
Hmm.
that sets the stage, right? If you're going fast, do it yourself, and make sure you're leading and you're acting and you're executing, and blaze a trail.
Right.
Or hey, this is bigger than I am. This is a marathon. I'm not in a hurry. I want to do it right. So therefore, you have to have different leadership skills and handle
Hmm.
things different because you're bringing in, kind of more people.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't make the decision, myself included, about which track they're on. But if you identify it up front and you go, okay, this is just me. I'm going to go it alone, and I gotta make this happen in a year or whatever it is. I don't have time to bring other people in and bring them up to speed. Anyway,
Yeah, I think the size and scope of the goal is a factor as well. Um, if you think you can do it all by yourself, you're going to wear out pretty quick. So it better be a really, really short term goal. I'd actually say, Jared, a year is a long time
to
to run
grind.
on your, yeah, to grind. So,
Yeah.
if you think you can do it for a weekend or a week, you can probably make it by yourself. But the more complex the goal, the bigger the goal, the more complex the goal, the more you're going to need to interact with other people.
Yeah.
And if you really want a great outcome, it's going to take the best efforts of a variety of different people with different gift sets, different skills in order to do a good job.
Yeah, and I think, and hopefully you'll agree with me on this. I think the natural inclination should be the marathon with a group, because even if you blaze a trail and accomplish something of significance in a year, well, guess who gets to do all the work going forward? You know, until you start backfilling, like, you know, you created it all, you own it all, and it's the grind isn't done until you start, putting the players and pieces into place.
Yeah, let's look at the Tour de France. I think most people they look at the winner of the Tour de France. They don't realize
Mm,
that the only reason that person won is because he or she had a team
yeah,
that they drafted behind.
yeah,
Somebody's breaking the trail, making it so that they're able to draft behind them and maintain high speed for such a long time. That's how you win.
yeah.
So one person gets the accolades, but it required the rest of the team to get it done.
Team effort. Yeah. Yep. Yep. And then I think you just naturally have to move slower, right? Patience. The people that are coming into your group are going to want to need. They're going to need to understand the mission, the vision, and embrace it, and be brought in slowly. You can't just say, here, read this. This is our mission statement. Jump on board and let's go. You know, it's like, something that you could do in days or weeks might take, weeks or months, because you're getting that other person on board. But once they're on board with the idea, the concept, and then now you've got multiple, sources of effort pushing in the same direction.
Right. As long as you are able to communicate the values that are driving you and the goal toward which you're pushing, yeah, it absolutely takes a long time to bring people on board. But ultimately, you can't make it unless you have those people around you for large, complex goals, whatever they may be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good segue into the next line item. And this one's a big topic, and a topic we've had in its own episode about, why you would be a resonant leader versus a dissonant leader. So, we won't spend probably a whole lot of time on this, but what I wanted to identify is, if you're naturally a dissonant leader, somebody, and I'll let you describe that a little bit more, but uh, you know, can't bring a group of people on, uh, you're going to need to identify which type of leader you are, resonant or dissonant, sooner than later. Because if you're dissonant, like, why start? In my opinion.
Well, I'm not sure dissonant leaders know that they're dissonant. So for people who haven't heard me talk about this before, a resonant leader can go into a group of people and join them in whatever emotional state they are. And then because they're able to manage their own emotions and they're infectious with their emotions, they're able then to draw people out of whatever emotional state they're in into a different emotional state. And so they get on the wavelength. Resonance is a physics term. It's about being on the same wavelength and then guiding that person to a different outcome. And the analogy that I think works is if you're on a swing and somebody's pushing you at the same frequency that you're swinging, you can swing higher because they're resonant. They're at the same frequency on the swing. A dissonant leader, like on a swing set, a dissonant leader is at a different frequency. You know, you're only halfway back and they push you again, and you're all the way back and they push you a little bit. And so it is not in the same frequency. And so you don't get that added benefit. And the way it works emotionally is a dissonant leader is the kind of person who walks into a group of people and they almost always say the wrong thing and make people feel worse, more upset, more stressed, more angry, more hopeless. That's a dissonant leader. They're not able to draw them to a new, better emotional state.
Yeah, so I think this goes back to the first line item, assessing your leadership skills or lack thereof. And, watching our prior episode, I'll try to link it below in the description. But, if you're a dissonant leader, go watch that episode and go, I got to change something. Otherwise, you're probably going to need to go fast by yourself.
or learn those skills.
Yeah.
And it may be worth it to you to learn those skills in order to draw people to you, to bring them around you.
Yeah.
Or take a role in another group with a different leader that can use your skills in not the head position, but as a supportive position.
Yeah.
And everybody needs a team. I mean, we can't all be leaders all the time. All of us are leaders some of the time, but all of us are followers some of the time. And so depending on the gift set of the group you're with, you might just be your job is to play a role, to be a supportive role. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would see this be an issue short, mid, and long term because the difficulty of bringing people on board and letting them catch the vision, the goal, the objective, but then also so you make it there and you're that dissonant leader that nobody likes and they're going to bail on you anyway, or we've heard horror stories about people jumping out of the business and taking a good chunk of the clients with them or whatever, because you had poor leadership skills and you drug them along for the ride, and now they're see something more attractive somewhere else, and you're resetting your efforts, in some cases.
Yeah. What's that old adage? People join a company for the company and they leave the company for a bad boss.
Yeah.
And so if you are not a good leader, people will jump ship. They'll leave the company to get away from you.
Yeah. Not if, but when. And how painful is it to you as the leader when they leave?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I heard one of those stories just today.
Oh, wow.
If you listen up, you'll hear about these transitions all the time because of poor leadership.
Yeah. That's a interesting one, but I encourage everybody to go listen to that episode and put a lot of thought into that one. But let's chat about poor values, unethical, immoral behavior. In real estate, here's a good example, and this is in a lot of different industries. If you have a license or a permit or something, if you have poor character and you're willing to, kind of fudge things here or lie about things here, we've seen high producing agents, just so we're speaking to our industry, do really stupid things to lose their license, to basically undo any ability to continue practicing real estate. That just doesn't make sense to me. So build good
Um,
character.
well, and again, character are the moral choices you make to limit the excesses of your personality's appetites. Uh, I, I, I want to make maybe a conceptual point. When we talk about poor values, we are actually positing that there are some values better than others. That there are some things, if you're a person who believes it all is in the eye of the beholder, that in certain contexts all behavior is acceptable, then my message is probably not going to really resonate with you, because I think there are some things that are unethical or immoral. They may not be illegal, but they can be bad.
Yeah. Well, and again, in our industry and others, just because it's not illegal doesn't mean you won't lose your license. You know, the,
Well, certainly, yeah,
the real estate
because
commission is going to say, I don't, you're not going to go to jail for it, but you're not going to keep your license.
right, and the way licensing works, it's a whole separate branch of the law. The administrative code in all states are separate from the civil code. They're separate from the criminal code, and those regulations have the force of law, but they're enforced differently than law. And what a license says is the state says you are now permitted to do this activity, and we can decide you're no longer permitted to do that activity, which is different than a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is super powerful. And I think we should hover here for a second so that people really get their head around what you just said. And that is, it's, it, in our legal system, it's, you're innocent until proven guilty, but it kind of the administrative side of things, sometimes you can be guilty until you're proven innocent and cause all kinds of grief and consternation. And, you could lose your license when, anyway, you've worded that eloquently before. If you could expound upon that.
Well, I think it's an important distinction that most people know about any licensed professional, is that the state has administrative law, and under administrative law in most states, they do not have the burden of proof. The burden of proof is different. In criminal law, you are innocent until proven guilty. In civil law, you're not guilty unless there's a preponderance of the evidence. Mm-hmm. In administrative regulations, you have to prove you're innocent. You're assumed to be guilty if they say so, and you have to prove innocence. Well, proving innocence is a lot like saying, prove that you weren't thinking about pink elephants.
Yeah.
Well, you can't prove it,
right.
But they can say, well, you were thinking about pink elephants, therefore you can't do this anymore. So it's a real different level of the regulatory environment. And so just be aware that they don't have to prove anything. They can just say it. You have to prove that they're wrong. Yeah. And it's tough it's next to impossible to prove that you're innocent.
Mm. Yeah. So the encouragement here is check your character, because if you're inclined to walk those fine lines, to push the envelope, it's going to be way easier to get burned in administrative law than civil or criminal law.
Or criminal law. Yeah.
And, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But there are people that push the envelope for whatever reason, greed or success, or, insert, things that'll make you do unethical or immoral things here.
Right.
So just know all the effort that you're putting in can go away very quickly by a poor decision.
Right. And if you're willing to take the consequence, feel free to do what you want, but be prepared to accept the consequence.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. The next two are kind of interconnected. So I put them in different orders, and then I flipped them around. But really, the idea here is plan and then execute on the plan, and don't get distracted from the plan or lose focus of what your efforts are. Meaning shotgunning doesn't work very well. that's that's my kind of loose interpretation of why I put this up here. If you're going to put in a lot of effort, plan that effort makes sense, right? Do something that's either been proven before and you're following a formula, or something you feel highly confident about that works. So plan to execute on that and stay focused, because there's a lot of things we do, especially in real estate, that can put you all over the map that isn't executing on the plan, but kind of needs to be done. So it's a fine line.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the research on planning has recommended backward planning, which is if you have to paint 1,000 chairs and you have a month to do it in, well, you don't start out saying, well, I'm going to paint 10 chairs today. No, you think, oh, I got 1,000 chairs, so I have to be half done in 15 days. That means I have to have 500 chairs done in 15 days, which means, okay, I've got to do how many chairs a day? Oh, okay. And so when you start planning with the end and you start planning backward, then you know how much you have to accomplish today, as opposed to, I'll just get this and then, we'll make it up later. We'll make it up later. That's poor planning. It's working from, okay, what's my outcome?
Yeah.
And then, okay, at the midpoint, I've got to be this far. And then at the quarter point, I need to be this far. And so what do I need to accomplish every day in order to keep on plan?
Yeah, and I love that because it sets the stage to what we talk about in our coaching and our training is look at the end goal in mind, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What do you want? Our encouragement is to build a repeat and referral business that you're never marketing, you're not chasing work, you've got inbound calls, inbound communication, and now you're doing real estate instead of trying to acquire prospects that become or leads that become prospects that become, that whole thing.
Right.
So what that does is says, am what I'm doing today solidifying the fact that this will be a repeat customer or that they're going to refer me business later? That's right. The hyper-focusedness of staying on point for that end goal. If you're doing something that detracts from that, then quit doing it. Because the end goal is way more important than that little activity. Set that little activity aside for the moment, whatever, minutes, hours, days.
Or if you want to do the activity, recognize, okay, this is taking away from my goal. One of the things I think the subtext of what you're saying is the amount of money, there's no top end to money.
Right.
I mean, nobody's made infinity dollars yet, but
Elon's trying, but anyway.
Well, I mean, we may in our lifetimes have our first trillionaire. I mean, that may happen, which is really unfathomable. How much money that is.
Mind-boggling, yeah.
But we do all have a finite amount of time. Unfortunately, we don't know how finite it is. We know it's finite, but we don't know, when the wick burns out. We just don't know when that is. Right. So the issue is, if you're going to give up time for something to do some other activity, recognize you're never going to get that back.
Right.
So it better be worth it.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Weigh the priority and is it meeting your long-term objectives and goals?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then the next ones I have is, a little bit in line with what we're just talking about, not being consistent at what you're doing. So you've got your plan, you're staying disciplined to your plan, but you're kind of inconsistent about what you're doing. I don't know what percentage of things require consistency. I'm sure there's some things that don't, not so much, but most things require, if nothing, a habit of consistency, because then you'll do it.
I'll use some examples. There was a time, probably in the 1990s, when Federal Express, FedEx, they had a saying, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. And they actually had it set up so that you knew exactly when it would be there, and they were consistent with it. In fact, I had something shipped with FedEx, and they told me it would take 4 days. Well, it got to the city in 2 days. But since they said it was going to get there in 4 days,
Whoa.
it sat
Yeah,
on the loading dock for 2 days.
because I told you it was going to take 4.
It was going to take 4. So they were super consistent. FedEx is having some trouble with consistency. And you don't care if it gets there faster, but you want to know exactly when it's going to get there, because you want your expectation to be the same all the time. I think the thing that Amazon is doing so well now is, if they tell you it's going to come in 2 days, lo and behold, most of the time it comes in 2 days. If they say it's going to come in 1 day, most of the time it's going to come in 1 day. They figured out the consistency thing. I'm happy to get it faster, but I'm furious if I get it later. So it's best to be at the same as promised.
Yeah, I'm making plans with that thing, whether it's because I'm excited to get it and open it, or, hey, I'm going to use it later that day,
Right. So the corollary to us is, you may do a great job one day, but if you do a lousy job the next day, that's inconsistent. If you do 85% work every day, people know exactly what they're going to get from you. Okay, they can live with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So go back to hey, I want repeat and referral business. If you're on point through the 3-month process of helping somebody buy a home, you're a month and a half into it, and man, you're just crushing it. You're super responsive. You're answering all the questions, and these people are like, wow, this guy's got it going on. And then all of a sudden, there's a couple of days where you're not communicating, or you're kind of him-hawing around on your answers. It throws a lot of doubt and a shade over everything else you've already done. Yeah. So if you're not going to be consistent, acknowledge what damage it can do to the reputation, the respect that you've built, and subsequently how it could potentially reflect on your ability to get repeat and referral business.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, we're all humans. So if something happens, just own it. It's like, hey, this is not me. My kid got sick, or, whatever it is. And they're, okay, that's not their normal MO.
Right. I mean, if your lifestyle is a bundle of inconsistency, well, then, expect it to show up in your work. But yeah, I think generally people are quite forgiving if there's an explanation. But if your life is full of explanations, people begin to see them as excuses.
Yeah. Yep. Very, very true. And this one kind of, did you have another thought?
No, it's good.
So the toxic relationship kind of feeds into this, especially the closer that relationships are to us, right? If your significant other, your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, or friends that are a little more distant, like that is going to ding on your ability to be consistent in life and with your clients. It's going to, in my experience, the more toxic the relationship, the more it just affects you as a person, and it detracts from almost everything we've been talking about. So be wary is what I'm saying.
Well, you've heard my term tornado magnets. That a tornado magnet is a person who attracts and creates chaos wherever they go. And anyone can get hit by a tornado. Anybody can have a tragedy befall them. But if you keep having that happen, you're bringing that on. And the more you have tornado magnets or toxic people around you, the more it will affect your life. And so, I have a rule that unless you're related to me by blood or marriage, if you're a tornado magnet, you're not in my life. I don't have time or space for that, because people are depending on me to be at a very high level of performance. And if you come into my life and create chaos, you're stealing my effort and my energy from people who have entrusted their well-being to me. So, as a realtor, if you have chaotic people, tornado magnets in your life, they are stealing from your clients who are entrusting this very large transaction to your guidance. And if you keep those people in your life because you just want to help them, okay, there are some people you just can't help.
Yeah. Right.
I was trained to be a lifeguard, and one of the hardest lessons the trainer told us is, she said, if you're not absolutely positively sure you can bring the person safely to shore, leave them to drown.
Wow. Did you say that out loud? Yeah.
What? And she said, here's why, is as you go out to rescue that person, because they're desperate, they will do everything in their power to get above the water line, even including standing on you and pushing you under the water to get leverage. They will drown you in their attempt not to drown. And it was sobering. And so it trained me to think, okay, if I'm not absolutely positively sure I can help this person redeem their life, help them get on their feet, whatever it is, then I could drown in the process.
Yeah.
And so I asked myself that question. If I'm going to help somebody, am I likely to be helpful? And if I'm not absolutely positively sure, I mean, it sounds harsh, but I leave them to drown. Maybe somebody else can rescue them.
Yeah.
Somebody else is a stronger swimmer. Somebody else has a boat.
Yeah.
Boat. Yeah. So I have to recognize that other people are depending on me. And I don't do it for selfish reasons. I do it because I have legitimate responsibilities to other people. And I have to say no to some in order to say yes to others.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's another good, that's a very good point, but another valuable point is to identify what we're not saying is quickly write people off. Identify, can you help them? Are they toxic? So not just, hey, you're getting in my way, so I'm going to write you off. Just analyze it. What did you say? If you're not
absolutely positively sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at?
Well, I like the way that you put it better, because I was going in a slightly different direction, but they're both applicable, and I like yours even better. So that's well said.
I think you're right. I think you make a great distinction, Jared, that just because somebody is an irritant to you, just because they're inconvenient to you, doesn't mean you can't help them. But the question is, am I absolutely positively sure I cannot help this person? If you're absolutely positively sure you can't, then let somebody else help them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Otherwise, they're just, stealing from your time that you can invest in others, and
they're stealing the resource that you have. There are people to whom you have legitimate responsibilities, and to steal from the effort and the energy that you can give to the people to whom you have legitimate responsibilities is a theft of them, and somebody else is taking it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the idea that you're not giving up on them, but maybe you need to give them to somebody else that can be of better help to them.
Yeah. I mean, Jared, I used to be a therapist, and I got out of that business because I realized there were certain people that I was not well suited to help. That doesn't mean I don't want them to get better.
Right.
It just means that I'm not the right person for that it exacts too much of a cost against the people with whom I have legitimate responsibilities. So I changed my career path.
Yeah. Yeah. No, a lot of wisdom there, a lot of wisdom. So thanks for sharing that. The poor use of power, and we kind of thought this at the beginning, that if we get to this is a massive topic.
Yeah.
This is kind of, you've reached success, and so the other ones were, during success or kind of mid success. This one's kind of, you're already there. So, and we're well past our 30 minutes. So we'll put this in another episode, but because I think this topic alone is
Yes.
helpful to understand, because you've got to prepare yourself that, could I potentially be the one to use power poorly? And is all that effort that I spent on becoming successful and what we talk about, reaching our glory, all for nothing because we don't know how to handle power? So please come back, listen to this episode as we do it next time, because I think it's going to be super powerful. Is there anything you want to kind of add to set the stage for that?
A powerful message on power. I like it.
There you go.
I think power is poorly understood, and unfortunately, many people have a negative connotation about power because they view it inherently negatively. And I hope in our next conversation we distinguish the effective use of power and the good use of power from the poor use of power.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you. I knew you set a good stage for that conversation. So looking forward to it. But so let's gotta land the plane here, as they say, and make sure people know how to get in touch with you and get your resources.
Yeah, they can reach me at my website, drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com. And on that website, you can find ways to order my books, Staying Happy, Being Productive, DIY Brain, and Expedition, all now available on Amazon. I've got another book that I'm working on right now called DIY Leader Brain, which is about the neurobiology of human interaction. I also have a couple online courses, one of which is available now, which is called Freak Out, which helps people to overcome anxiety, and another one coming out shortly, which is my Expedition course, which will be available in the near future, which will be a 15-session course that, Jared, you're quite familiar with.
Yeah.
If you'd like to follow me, you can find my podcast, which is Second Thoughts with Roger Hall, on all the major podcast channels and on YouTube.
Excellent. All kinds of ways to get in touch with you and gather the resources. Of course, we would love to chat with you about how it is that we lean into helping you develop that perfect real estate business for you. Right? This isn't a coaching program in a box. We don't just map things out and say, give us a bunch of money and do these things. It's truly identifying, how you're wired, what you're passionate about, the ins and outs of what you're going to experience, and help walking through that, all with the correct mental mindset, at the beginning, such that when you reach what you teach is our glory, right? The fullest expression of ourself, that we don't fall victim to poor use of power, or didn't create the team to help you maintain and sustain that successful, whatever it is, in this case,
Right.
successful real estate business. So anyway, but all good stuff. Thanks again.
All
Dr.
good
Hall.
stuff. All right. Grateful to be here. Thank you, Jared.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Other than that, we'll wish you a blessed one. Take care.